No one went to the birthday party for the CEO's paralyzed daughter until a poor boy said, "Can I join you?" And that simple moment of kindness would become the greatest lesson in justice a privileged family could ever receive. "Daddy, when are my friends going to arrive?" The gentle voice of little Lily Carter echoed through the empty hall of the Carter mansion. 24 pink balloons floated sadly above rows of empty chairs. Daniel Carter, one of the most powerful business tycoons in the city, glanced at his luxury wristwatch for the 10th time. It had already been 2 hours since the party was supposed to start, but not a single guest had come. The Princess Castle cake sat untouched. The gourmet cupcakes remained neatly arranged. Even the professional clown Daniel had hired for $1,000 looked bored, scrolling on his phone. Daniel forced a smile for his daughter. "They must be stuck in traffic, sweetheart." But he knew the truth. Ever since the accident that left Lily in a wheelchair 2 years ago, the families of their wealthy circle had slowly pulled away. The polite excuses were endless, but the reality was simple. Disability made them uncomfortable. Lily's movements in her custom wheelchair were a painful reminder of her late mother, who had died in the same accident. Daniel swallowed his grief and adjusted his designer tie. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Daniel rushed to the entrance, his heart racing with hope. Maybe, finally, one of the invited children had arrived. But when he opened the grand doors, his smile froze. On the steps stood a boy about 8 years old. His clothes were worn, faded jeans, patched sneakers, and a Superman t-shirt with tiny holes. His eyes, however, sparkled with genuine joy. "Hello, sir," the boy said politely. "I heard there's a birthday party here. My name's Aiden. I live down the street in the housing flats." Daniel hesitated. Of all the rich kids who had ignored Lily's invitation, it was a poor boy, without an invitation, who had the courage to knock on their door. "I don't have a gift," Aiden admitted, "but I can sing happy birthday really loud if that's okay." Just then, Lily wheeled herself to the doorway. "Daddy, who is it?" Aiden grinned, showing a missing tooth. "Hi, you must be the birthday girl. Happy birthday." For the first time in months, Lily giggled. "Do you really want to stay at my party?" "Of course. Birthday parties are the best." Daniel stood stunned. In just minutes, this boy had brought his daughter more joy than expensive therapists or fancy events ever could. The afternoon became magical. Aiden invented games where Lily was the hero. He complimented the decorations as if they were the most wonderful things he had ever seen. "Wow, that cake is huge," he exclaimed. "At home, we celebrate with a small box cake, but this one looks like a castle." Lily laughed so hard, she nearly spilled her soda. "You're the funniest friend I've ever had." From the window, Daniel watched them play in the garden. Gratitude filled his heart, but also guilt. How could a child from a struggling neighborhood show more compassion than the entire elite of Westfield? His phone rang. It was Mrs. Carter, mother of Lily's former classmate and president of the most exclusive private school in town. "Daniel," she said coldly, "some parents are concerned. They say there's a boy from the housing project at your home." Daniel clenched his fists. "You mean Aiden? The only child who cared enough to show up for my daughter?" "Daniel, you must understand. Our families have standards. Children from such backgrounds, they don't belong in our circle. You must think of Lily's fragile state." Through the window, Daniel saw Aiden pushing Lily's wheelchair across the grass, both laughing like race car drivers. He cut her off sharply. "You know what, Mrs. Carter? That boy has more manners and more kindness than any of you. Don't ever call me again." Later that evening, as Aiden prepared to leave, Lily held his hand. "Will you come back tomorrow?" Aiden smiled. "If your dad allows me, I'll be back every day." "But what if people say bad things about you?" Lily asked softly. The boy's eyes shone with wisdom beyond his years. "My grandma always tells me, people who judge by appearances can never see your heart, and people with good hearts don't care what others think." Daniel's throat tightened. This boy was teaching lessons CEOs and politicians had failed to learn. "Aiden," Daniel said, kneeling to his level, "you will always be welcome in this house." But kindness soon came under attack. The following week, pressure mounted. Lily's private school hinted she should avoid inappropriate friendships. Daniel's business suddenly lost contracts. The golf club suggested he rethink his social priorities. And the cruelest blow, Lily returned from school in tears. "Daddy, the girls said I can't sit with them at lunch anymore because I'm friends with a..." She choked back the insult. That was the moment Daniel decided. Enough was enough. He drove to Aiden's home in the housing flats. There he met Grandma Rosa, a dignified woman with silver hair, and Miguel, Aiden's hard-working father, who returned home each day in paint-stained overalls. "Mr. Carter," Rosa said gently, "perhaps it's better if Aiden doesn't visit anymore. We don't want to cause you more trouble." Daniel shook his head firmly. "Absolutely not. Your grandson has given my daughter her smile back. I came here to learn something. How do you stay strong when people judge you for who you are?" Rosa smiled with quiet strength. "We remind ourselves that dignity doesn't come from their approval. It comes from how we live, with honesty, with kindness, and with courage." Daniel nodded slowly. In that humble apartment, he saw more strength and nobility than he had ever seen in the grand halls of Westfield society. Days later, truth surfaced. With the help of his lawyer, Daniel discovered shocking evidence. Mrs. Carter and her elite circle had been secretly plotting to buy out the entire housing complex for a luxury development, forcing families like Aiden's onto the streets. They weren't just cruel, they were corrupt. At the next city council meeting, Daniel arrived with Aiden's family, lawyers, journalists, and even federal investigators. The evidence was undeniable. Recordings, emails, fraudulent contracts, all exposing a conspiracy of greed and prejudice. Before flashing cameras, the very people who had mocked a child in a wheelchair and rejected a boy for being poor were led out in handcuffs. Justice had arrived. Months later, Westfield was transformed. Miguel became director of community projects at Daniel's company, earning respect across the city. Grandma Rosa volunteered at new community clinics, and Aiden, once dismissed as an outsider, earned a scholarship, proving his brilliance in school. Lily, surrounded by true friends, discovered her voice as an advocate for inclusion. She and Aiden spoke at schools and events, teaching children what true friendship meant. At the next city council meeting, Daniel arrived with Aiden's family, lawyers, journalists, and even federal investigators. The evidence was undeniable. Recordings, emails, fraudulent contracts, all exposing a conspiracy of greed and prejudice. Before flashing cameras, the very people who had mocked a child in a wheelchair and rejected a boy for being poor were led out in handcuffs. Justice had arrived. Months later, Westfield was transformed. Miguel became director of community projects at Daniel's company, earning respect across the city. Grandma Rosa volunteered at new community clinics, and Aiden, once dismissed as an outsider, earned a scholarship, proving his brilliance in school. Lily, surrounded by true friends, discovered her voice as an advocate for inclusion. She and Aiden spoke at schools and events, teaching children what true friendship meant. As for Daniel, his business flourished more than ever, but this time with a purpose beyond profit. His company became known for affordable medicine and community support, and the people who once whispered behind his back now praised his courage. 1 year later, Lily turned 8. This time her birthday was overflowing with children, rich and poor, from every background. But in the center of it all was Aiden, holding the same bright smile as the day he first knocked on their door. "Daddy," Lily whispered that evening, "remember when nobody came to my party?" Daniel hugged her tightly. "Yes, sweetheart, and I'll never forget that it turned out to be the greatest gift of all, because it brought us Aiden." Sometimes, the simplest act of kindness can change not only a family, but an entire community.